Everything in prison is racist. That's just the way it is. And I'm about to tell you a story that may be offensive, or you may deem it offensive, but it's the reality of what goes on in prison. And the story starts off with a boy, or should I say a dude, a convict named Jew Boy. That's right, dude was literally called Jew Boy. Well, Jew Boy was an inmate who was doing time, in the prison I was in, and he was mixed Jewish. So they called him Jew Boy. And the only reason people even knew he was Jewish is because he was on a special dietary restriction, where when he went to the cafeteria, or should I say the chow hall, to get chow, he got a special tray, just like, the Muslims or people who are diabetics, they get special trays, or diabetics get bags at the end of the day because they need to eat at nighttime to keep their blood sugar, at a correct level. Well, Jew Boy was the only Jew in the entire prison who got a dietary restriction based on his, Judaism past, or Judaism. That's what his religion was. He pretended like that because he wanted a special diet, but on the slick, he was a Christian. Anyway, he was also in the army, and there was a black officer, who we're going to call Sarge for the purpose of this video. Well, Sarge was a Vietnam vet, and he hated everybody, especially inmates. It just so happened that the only inmates that Sarge didn't dislike were any inmates who were of military service. Any inmate who was in the military, that's the only inmates he would talk to. Other than that, it was just giving verbal commands. You listen and you move on. Or if you had to ask Sarge for a question, had to ask him a question or something, it was real professional. He wanted zero communication with inmates. Well, they had a few Vietnamese inmates on the compound, and Sarge was in Vietnam, and he absolutely hated Vietnamese inmates. And one day I'm talking to Jew Boy, and we on the yard. And I said, man, you and Sarge do a lot of talking, huh? He's like, yeah, he's cool. I said, man, I can't stand that dude, man. He hates everybody. He don't like white people. He said, nah, it ain't just that he don't like white people. He don't like nobody. I said, he don't like nobody? Yeah. He said, you think he don't like white people? He really don't like Vietnamese people. I said, for real? He said, man, them two Vietnamese dudes and two dudes I knew on the yard. He said, yeah, he refers to one as General Chow and the other as Stir Fry. I said, he called him General Chow and Stir Fry? He said, yeah. He said when he was in Vietnam, he said he was shell shocked, and he don't trust no Vietnamese, I said, he don't trust none? He said, man, he don't trust none. And so what made me remember this story is I was chewing his bubble gum, and Sarge used to chew gum all the time like this. And he had those Top Gun Tom Cruise aviator glasses. Dark, you couldn't see to his eyes. He was clean shaven. He had a heavy mustache. Dude was about 6'3", and he just had that gaze. He was always staring with them glasses on. You could see your reflection through them glasses, so you didn't know where his eyes was really looking. So Jew Boy's telling me, he said, yeah. He said, when Sarge is up in that gun tower, I said, yeah. He said, yeah, he told me he's sitting there and he's always testing his sights on the Vietnamese dudes when they on the yard. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, man, he's constantly scoped in on the Vietnamese dudes as they, playing soccer, walking the yard. Every time a Vietnamese dude comes on the yard and he's in the gun tower, he got his scope locked in on him. I said, what he's doing? He said up there chewing that gum, fantasizing about pulling that bloom, bloom, bloom trigger. I said, for real? He said, yeah. He said, man, what it is, he said, he was telling Jew Boy, he said, yeah, when I was in Nam, Viet Cong, took a couple good buddies of mine. He said, I ain't never forgot it, and I ain't never gonna forget it. Well, anyway, things that happen in prison, such as rumors, start making their way around. So they made their way to the Vietnamese dudes. You know what you gonna do? You gonna call the captain or go to the warden and say, warden, Jew Boy said that Sarge is up there in that tower, testing his scopes on me every time I hit the yard because he don't like Vietnamese people. Furthermore, I heard that Sarge calls me General Chow. Sarge called me General Chow and called my friend Stir Fry. And that's how the Vietnamese are talking up in there, And look, one thing about New Orleans got a large Vietnamese population in Louisiana. On the West Bank, in Avondale, and in New Orleans East. It always been like that. So a lot of people are cool with the Vietnamese. Vietnamese are the ones who were moving weight back here, getting that weight from Vietnam and moving it down here. Anyway, the Vietnamese dudes done found out about Sarge, and they ain't like Sarge neither. and they'd be on that yard, and Sarge would be looking at them, and they'll walk by, and they'll say something in Vietnamese, you know. And then one day the dude said, man, what y'all be saying in Vietnamese? Say, bro, say what y'all be saying in Vietnamese. And one of the Vietnamese dudes said, we tell Sarge, your mama is dog, and we gonna eat your dog. He said, no, bro. He said, yeah, I told him gonna eat his mama dog. I said, oh, man, don't let Sarge find out y'all found that out, you know? And Sarge used to be writing these dudes up on write-ups, man. It was some crazy stuff, man. Anyway, I thought about Sarge chewing his bubble gum, you know? And look, before you get offended, prison is a harsh place. Both those Vietnamese dudes, they might not have liked it, or they might have felt whatever, but they didn't go, you know, rat on Sarge and go to the man on Sarge and all that. And dudes did their time. Sarge did his shift, and everybody went home. They just didn't like each other, and that's just the way it is. Welcome to prison, or should I say welcome to the Pen and The Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. Go check out my other videos. This was just a quick story I remembered about prison, and I wanted to share it. I was chewing my gum, and I thought about old Sarge and that conversation I had with Boy when he told me that Sarge was putting the rifle scopes on them two dudes, man, calling them one General Chow and one Stir Fry. I'm like, man, this stuff crazy, man. Give me a like and subscribe.